Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Savannah Stender, and I will be your moderator for tonight. But I'm also the director of coaching programs here at Pivotal. At Pivotal, we support young people from the foster care system with career and education tools so that they can choose for themselves the lives they want to live and hopefully to thrive in those lives. I feel very privileged to work alongside a Pivotal team who is amazing and to also work alongside our scholars who every day show up with strength and kindness and compassion. So, on behalf of Pivotal, I'm thrilled that you're with us tonight. May is National Foster Care Month, and that's why myself and several others on the Pivotal team are wearing blue today. We have a fabulous program for you. We're going to be able to introduce an esteemed author, Shalita O'Neale, who's going to be sharing with us some things about her personal journey and her newest and latest release, a book called Choosing Peace. This has been quite a year for all of us. Shalita is going to be giving us some great insight on how she's managed trauma and hopes to give us all some tools tonight. I would guess that any one of us, but maybe even folks who you know, have maybe experienced some difficulties through this pandemic. So we do hope that you walk away tonight with some tools that can help you and your loved ones find some peace, some joy, and some happiness. And with that, I am so pleased to pass the stage over to Shalita O'Neale.
Thank you so much, Savannah. Hi, everybody. Hi, Pivotal family. That was a beautiful and warm welcome. Happy May Foster Care Month, right? I feel so just honored to be here. And I thank Pivotal again for giving me the platform to be able to share more about my story, because this has been my life's work. I love what Pivotal is doing. As I get to tell you a little bit more later, education is so important, especially for our young people in foster care. So the work that you are doing is absolutely amazing. I'm joining you all from Maryland. I know people are I'm joining from different places, but that's where I am. And I wanted to open up by sharing some slides just about a couple of things about my personal journey. I know we're going to get a little bit, a lot of it deeper into my story, and I look forward to that. But I just want to share some things, just opening up. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully, let's see, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm looking at here. So do you see the presentation, or do you see the notes? The presentation?
Presentation.
Wonderful. Okay, so as everybody knows, I'm Shalita O'Neale. And now I'm an author, self-published, excited about sharing more about my journey and my healing process as it continues. Just a little bit, for those of you that have already read the book, you know that my mother's tubes were actually tied, and I got here anyway. So I'm here, and whenever I start to question what my purpose is, I always remember that I fought to get here, right? And I wrote this book because we all have a story, right? But I've been telling my story for about 20 years. And people have always said, you should write a book about your story, because people need to hear your journey and the things that you've gone through, because hopefully it could help them through theirs. And that meant a lot to me as I was thinking through what I wanted to share and how I wanted to share. It was a difficult journey. It took me 3 to 4 years to write this book, because every time I would write a chapter, it would open up another wound that I didn't know that I needed to focus on. And but I knew I needed to finish it, because there's somebody out there that could hear a part of the story and be able to relate to it, and maybe it can transform their lives. So this is, why I've written the book, and also being deliberate about finding purpose through despair. So my mother, I lost my mother, right? I said I lost my mother, but I gained my purpose. And it took me a while to get to this point to better understand what that truly meant. But her murder shook the entire family, and I didn't quite understand how it shook them, or to the depth that it did, until much, much later, because I was going through my own, process of trying to figure out what that meant for me. This is a picture of my beautiful mommy. Her name is Josephine. And, it took a long time before I was able to say that although I miss my mother in different ways, and I will continue to miss her throughout my life. I don't regret how things happened, because if they didn't happen the way that they did, I would not have been able to be the foster care advocate that I have been over the years. I would not be able to share my story in such a way that can relate to young adults who oftentimes do not know their voice, do not know just how the gravity and the power in their voice. So, you know, I'm at a place now where I still miss her, but I understand that this has been part of my life's purpose. So some of the things that I have learned, and we'll go deeper into detail about it, and I can't wait to do that, but being trusting, right? So here I put, refusing to trust others doesn't protect you. It opens you up to the type of self-inflicted turmoil that hurts worse than someone else breaking your trust. There's no greater pain than the pain that comes from refusing to trust, accept, and love yourself. And this is an excerpt from the book. And it is something that I still continue to work through, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But these are just some of the core pieces that I pulled out of the book, some of the things that I've learned from the experiences in my childhood. Also, when you discover the rage you held on to no longer serves its purpose, you must learn how to let that shit go. And it's easier said than done, but that is still something that, forgiveness is a really big part of the work that I continue to work on, or and that's continues to be a part of my healing process. It's not just something that happens overnight. And worth is measured by your own self-love and a willingness to grow beyond your worst fears and negative influences. This is also something that I'm still working through. When we talk about self-care, self-love, self-worth, worthiness is a huge thing that I've had to deal with over the years, not really understanding what that meant for me, and how not feeling worthy, even on a subconscious level, has kept me from some of the things that I've wanted to do in life, but hadn't been able to do. But it required me to change my language, change my mindset, change my actions, and change my life. So this is a quote that really sticks out to me, because no matter what I've gone through in my childhood, whether it was in foster care, before I came into foster care, and even as I was growing into a young adult, I had to look at my situation and understand that there was going to be a level of change that I was going to have to embrace, and that I was going to have to lead in my own life before I could see the changes that I wanted to see in my life. And then lastly, when I was thinking about the name of the book, Choosing Peace, that's exactly what I did. I could have chose so many different things. I was angry at different points in my life, and that fueled me in different ways. But I decided to choose peace because I wanted something different for my son, who you see pictured there. That's Amani, and my husband, Brian. And for me, being able to create the family that I've always wanted, and being able to, what we like to say, shift or destroy the generational curses and the generational trauma that we've had, that means all the world to me. So I found myself through creating my own family and being intentional about that. And even in the moments where I'm still working through some of the things that I just said to you, trusting, self-worth, self-love, and it can be difficult, I always remember that there is something to be grateful for. I always have something to be grateful for. And whenever I feel like I'm having a hard time figuring out what those things are, I look at this picture and it reminds me of just how much I have. And so that's the slides that I wanted to share with you going into our conversation today.
Thank you so much for sharing, Shalita. I loved reading your book, and it's actually so amazing that we're able to spend some time with you today, and that you're with the Pivotal family and lots of friends who are on the call.
Thank you.
I had a few questions for you.
Yes.
And I know that our guests will probably have some questions too. So for anyone who's on the call, you are so welcome to drop your questions into the chat, and we'll spend some time towards the end trying to get through as many as we can. Mm-hmm. Shalita, you know this, but I'll let everyone else on the call know too, that before we even had this event today, we were actually able to ask some of our scholars, what would you want to ask, Shalita? So a couple of these questions are actually coming from Pivotal scholars.
Yeah.
And this is actually one of them. We asked them, what does trust mean to you? And this was one response that we got. Trust is something that is developed over time. It's being consistent and dependable. And so this scholar asked, when you say you find it in your heart to forgive, does that mean that you trust them?
Mm. And that's a good question. And there were so many good questions that the scholar submitted to. I just wanted to uplift that. But I don't think that trusting or forgiving someone is linked to trusting them again. Trust is a really, it's a complex thing too, and it depends on who you are and what that truly means to you. But for me, it started out with really looking at, did I trust myself? And it translated into me not trusting others, right? So the forgiveness piece is something that I continue to work on. And in some aspects, I've have forgiven people in my life who have wronged me, but that doesn't mean that I have to put myself in the same situation again, because I may be doing my own healing work, which I am, but everybody else is in a different part of their journey and they may not be there. So that doesn't mean you have to reopen yourself up to toxic relationships or toxic situations. So yeah, it is different, but trusting really does start internally with with how you look at that, right?
Thank you. That was a huge theme in your book, right? One of the reasons why you could choose peace is because you learned sort of the trust, and it was heroic the way you got through it and the things you're able to share. So when I first got your book and I flipped through it, there was something that stood out to me and it instantly made me smile. Your chapter that's called Let That Shit Go. And this really resonated with me, but I know that it's easier said than done. So what advice would you give someone who's um, living a life where they're struggling with just holding on to those wrongs and those things that have happened?
Yeah. Well, I think that process is different for everyone, but for me, it was just a matter of trying to look at the situation from different perspectives. And I know that is easier said than done. It's a process. It takes time, but for me to be able to look at, as you see in the book with my uncle and the things that I had went through with him, I was right to hold on to some things. I was right because of the abuse that I went through. But then I also was able to look at it from his perspective too, around the generational trauma and how it's passed down and how some things feel personal because they are personal, right? When people are either abusing you or saying things to you that hurt, it feels very personal. But then being able to take a step back and see that a lot of times people are only doing what they know and doing the best that they can with what they have and what they know in that situation. So, in addition to showing ourselves compassion and grace, being able to do that to in some way to others, because I know that can be hard, but that is one thing that has helped me in that process. But then to also look at, where do I want to be in my life? Because they say, when you're thinking about not even necessarily revenge, but that too, it's like holding a hot stone in your hand, waiting to throw it at the person who harmed you. You are harming yourself more so than the other person. So forgiveness and moving forward is more so for you. And it's more so for me to get to where I want to be in life, to be able to let that shit go.
You said something a little bit about just you sort of hurt yourself in the process when you think you're hurting someone else. And for me, that moment, it feels good, right? And I've worked with
Mm-hmm.
young people for a while, and I think I'd like to take just a teeny segue with you because um, lots of young people feel like they have to just let that shit go like immediately. And if they don't within a certain time frame, it's like, I'm never getting there. How long do you really do this healing process, this journey, this path that you've been on?
So I didn't catch what you said previously. You said, how long does it take, or how?
Yeah, I think young people have often been like, well, I got to just kind of get over this now, right? And
Mm-mm.
it's like, you got life ahead of you, right? So
Right.
what would you
Yeah, it takes time. Everybody is different and everybody processes trauma and the things that have happened to them in a different way. And, it took me years and it's still a process. I'm still unpacking things, and that's where I say it's really important to show yourself compassion and grace when it comes to that. There is no time period of, oh, when I need to get over this. It's really a conversation that you have with yourself about what do you want for yourself? What do you want for your future? And what does that require? You know, what's holding you back? And what interactions with people that you keep replaying in your mind that's keeping you from achieving the things that you want to achieve? And then you start to slowly unpack as you learn more about yourself and how those things show up for you. You know, there is no time limit.
Thank you. This is actually another question from a scholar. And just as some context, Pivotal has also made a conscious effort to support our scholars and our coaches to understand the real life struggles and especially the violence throughout the years and most recently of our Black and other, young people of color, that what they have experienced. And so a scholar actually asked, um, do you feel like your experience as a Black foster youth is different than that of other foster youth?
So being on the outside of it now and being able to look at hindsight, you know how they say hindsight is 2020. I would say absolutely. When I was in it, I didn't quite understand, because we know that racism and structural racism is ubiquitous. So, it can be invisible in different ways. But, doing the work now, yes, we know disproportionately Black children are represented within the child welfare system. It's they take longer to be reunified with their families. They are more likely to become involved with the criminal justice system and juvenile delinquency or detention because, that's just how our society overall has been operating, right? So I would say yes, and I'm cautiously hopeful because child welfare agencies are starting to really look at this and look at the differences and experiences of Black children within the foster care system and how they can maybe shift some of their policies. So yeah, there is a huge difference. There is.
Thank you. Another scholar's question, definitely from somebody who has read your book. They said, you are a proud mother and you have shown your son a lot of love and the kind that any child deserves. Do you share some of your life struggle with your son?
I do actually. We have conversations a lot. I actually gave him a copy of my book and he started reading it, but then I took it back because I feel like there's some elements of it that he may not truly be able to appreciate. Um, even going deeper into the abuses that I experienced, but I have told him, I'm transparent with him because that's one thing that I want to shift. When I was growing up, you don't have conversations, you can't really ask questions about stuff. And I regret that now that there's information and questions I have that I will never have answered about my past and about my family. And I don't want to pass that on to him. So absolutely, we discuss it in a way that he can understand at his developmental age. Mm-hmm.
So we also recently asked scholars just through our coaching how they want to be celebrated because at Pivotal we love to celebrate any kind of success in whatever way that celebration looks like for that young person. And it might feel like a simple question, but we found that it was actually a pretty challenging question for our scholars when we asked them, how do you want to be celebrated? And in your book, this same theme kind of came to life again. And so I guess the question here is, can you talk a little bit about the struggle that you had? You shared a little bit in your book about celebrating success, and you had even described it in your book as kind of a struggle that you didn't really celebrate your own success until much later. So what's your advice on how do scholars celebrate themselves?
And that's the thing. It is a struggle. It continues to be a struggle. I am one of those people that have a hard time accepting compliments, because because of, when you're growing up not used to having compliments, or if trying to blend in as much as possible, because sometimes differences can mean, could be challenging, right? So I think what Pivotal is doing by celebrating the scholars is so very important. And it's something that more organizations and more within the child welfare system too, that should happen, because we need to get into the habit of looking at the strengths of young people, because we hear a lot about the negative side of foster care, negative behaviors and things like that, but not enough about strength-based. So I think just by consistently pointing out those things that young people in and from foster care do well, and helping them to explore where that could lead them, which is something that I think we can just overall, with young people in care, can do a lot better with.
Thank you. We have just a couple more questions. And this question, a young person asked, how did you pick up this really deep understanding about yourself over the years?
Savannah. Okay, so that
I know you said
look,
before we were going to go a little bit deep and that maybe we'd go a lot a bit deep. I think this is the one.
and that's all good. I'm here for it. I mean, I've always been told that, just some people are born with having an old soul. You hear that, like, oh, you have an old soul, you're wise, you look at things differently. Um, I've always heard that, but it wasn't really until I want to say maybe 7 years ago where I was intentional about, let me look a little bit deeper into what I'm doing and how I'm showing up, because I was trying to get to a point in my life and it just felt like there was a ceiling and I couldn't get past it. And I'm like, what's going on? And previous to that, I was in a place where everything was external. I'm like, oh, it's everybody else. It's not me. And then once I went into, as you see in the book, a program called Momentum Education that helped me to look deeper, be reflective about what are my behaviors, what are my belief systems, and how have they been challenging me and getting to the next level. So it was ugly. It's an ugly process. For people out here that look at the memes on Facebook and say, oh, heal and self-worth and holding flowers and stuff. Oh no, it was ugly. It got to a point where, my husband had been telling me different things about my communication style, about how I was showing up. And up until that point, I was like, it's you, it's not me. So it's a level of being able to humble yourself and say, okay, if things aren't going the way that I want them to go, then how can I shift? What's my role in this? And it's ugly, but it's worth it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for going there. Really appreciate it. I think
I told you we go about it.
yeah, I see some, I recognize some names on this call. Some of our pivotal scholars are here, and I think it's so good for them to hear, you know what, messiness is just a part of it.
It's
Messiness
messy.
and the ugliness, it's a
Mm-hmm,
part of it, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You've had, a lot of life struggles, but it sounded like, even in your book, that you always put your education first. Why do you think that is? Who do you think planted that seed for you?
So even in all the dysfunction, my uncle, the one who I lived with, actually helped to plant that seed. He was very strict about school, and told me that that was going to be my way out. And I knew that that was going to be my way out of my situation. So no matter what I needed to do, I performed well in school. And there was so much going on around me that I just had to make sure that that was what I latched on to. And that's why I feel like the work that Pivotal is doing is so important, because I struggled through college. I knew that was where I needed to go, because in my situation, it was either I was actually going to go into the military because I thought that that was the only way that I could pay for school. But in Maryland, we have the tuition waiver. So that helped me to be able to go to school without having to go into the military. But while I was there, it was hard. I almost flunked out in the second year. And I shared this in my book too. And I didn't have a program quite like Pivotal, right? So there was an organization that I was, that I got connected to in school, which helped me through in different ways. But I feel like the work of Pivotal, it's you really can't put you can't put a dollar sign on it. You can't. It's priceless, because had I had that, then maybe I would have done better in the first 2 years of of college, right? Maybe I would have had even more social capital coming out of college, because I realized that is, if you don't, it's all about who you know. And if you don't have connections of people who you can call, then life is a whole lot more difficult, right? So yeah, education was my way out, and it's the way out for a lot of the scholars that you are working with right now. And so that's why your work is so deeply important.
Thanks so much, Shalita. I know that I could sit here for hours asking you questions. And I want to make sure to take this time just to show everyone Shalita's book, Choosing Peace. You can find it on Amazon. You can also go to the link that will be dropped in the chat to get your copy. And for any Pivotal Scholar who's on this call right now, just talk to your coach so that we can get you a free copy as well if you don't already have one. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to be able to go actually to the audience. There's a couple of questions already. The first question in the chat is from Tara, and she asked, do you think your book hurt family members? I know for me, Certain family members still don't accept or acknowledge what I went through. We went deep again.
Era. I'm going to say yes, right? Whenever you're telling a story, there's going to be people who do not like it, right? Because it shows them maybe, what they did, the error in their ways and how they didn't show up. I actually had my sister, right? She actually went around to a lot of my family members and was asking them, did you read her book? Did you see what she said about me? Did she, and it was difficult, but I already knew that was going to happen. So when you tell your story, it's your story. And what I saw another meme that said, if people wanted you to be nice and about them in your story, they should have treated you better. Right. So it's your truth and your story, and you tell it anyway. And I decided to tell it anyway because I knew it was going to help somebody else. So yes, they're going to come out the woodworks, and it's not your responsibility to try to convince anybody else of what they did to you. Again, you know your truth, and part of your own healing process is to be able to acknowledge that, right? And not allow them to guilt you from sharing your story.
Thank you. I read your book and I read it in one sitting.
Oh, wow.
It was a hard read for me because I feel like some of our situations were very parallel. But thank you for writing it.
Thank you. Thank you for reading it, Tara. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Shalita, the next question from Dominic is, how much does trauma and suffering affect education? And how do we offer services that are attentive to trauma while supporting education at the same time?
Wow, those are two really good questions that I could dig into forever. But what I would say is, and what I always say is that what's going on with students or young people in and from foster care outside of education or outside of school absolutely affects how they perform academically. There is no delineation between it. There is no, oh, we're academic here or school here, and then other life, outside of it here. So it definitely influences it. I would say just the way Pivotal currently connects coaches, to and mentors to young people who are in school, right? And I'm sure also working with them on coaching them through things that are happening to them in their personal life, connecting them to other people that could be supportive in different ways, giving them access to resources that could help them get through some of their situations. I think it's absolutely critical, right? And I think, hopefully we'll get to a point where all schools, period, universities, post-secondary education, vocational schools, have elements of wraparound services or partnerships with organizations like Pivotal to be able to provide that sort of support, because it's necessary. It takes a village, it takes a community, and that's what I would say is helpful.
Thank you. Another question from the chat from Mary Beth. She says, I love the title. What a great choice. What small tips do you have to share for finding peace on a daily basis, especially during those tough moments?
I would say to spend more time thinking about what is it that you love? What are those things that you've been told you can't pay attention to because everybody else needs your attention? And make time for those slowly but surely. It doesn't have to be this whole revelation where taking a 3-month sabbatical, going off to Mexico or to Cabo or wherever. It doesn't have to be that, because I know we have very busy lives. But I think what helped me was to just sit for a second and figure out, what do I like to do? And that's when I learned I like sewing. I like gardening. If you like gardening, get you a plant. It doesn't have to go out and buy a farm and start that way. Start small and just be deliberate and intentional about self-care and making time for yourself slowly but surely. And that grows into something bigger, and to the point where you can actually integrate that. And that's why I've been more intentional about integrating all of who I am into everything that I do. So whether I'm doing a training, I'm going to talk about the plants. I'm going to talk about herbalism. I'm going to talk about self-care, because that's part of me, so slowly but surely.
Perfect. Another question for you from Sarah in the chat. What is the intention of the journal entry prompts at the end of the chapters in your book? There's so many good prompts and questions, and I'm wondering what to do with them.
So I didn't want this to be a book, like many books, where it was just me pouring out my trauma and my story, and that's it. I really wanted to be intentional about engaging with the reader, and for you to think about, this is how I processed, or how I'm where I am in my healing journey, and the questions that I asked myself. And so hopefully by you asking yourself the same questions and then writing that down, it can help you through your process. So I wanted it to be more of a guide instead of me just sort of dumping on the reader without, you knowing what to do with that information.
Hmm. And you had talked earlier about just these moments of reflection that you had them over and over and over again in different ways. And for me, that's what those prompts really were about, was just
Yeah.
like sort of your guide for others to just do some reflecting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
Thanks, Savannah.
I know there's a couple more questions in here. One is from Lupe. She asks, in what ways did you seek help in terms of healing, like therapy, maybe?
So for me, I had therapy when I was in the foster care system, and, group therapy, that was helpful to talk it through in that way. I think when I became intentional about being reflective, it really wasn't until I was, I think I turned 30, is when in that program where one of my friends invited me. I didn't even know what I was going to. And I found it that way, right? But I was open to it. Um, so that's really, how I started my own process of unpacking and healing. And that was my therapy up until then, was exploring the things that made me happy. So gardening, like I said, sewing, those things were like my therapy to help me slow down and breathe. Because as someone who was addicted to achieving and feeling like trying to get external validation, I didn't slow down, long enough to even look at some of the things that I had to do internally until that point.
Thanks so much, Shalita. And I got a baby who's joined the show for a second.
Okay.
There's another question in the chat from Tom, and he says, can you speak about your journey with forgiveness or
Mm.
otherwise dealing with the pain and trauma that you experienced?
Oh, that journey with forgiveness. It's that too is messy, and it took a while because I was angry. I was angry in different ways. And I didn't know that it was linked to forgiveness at first, because with my mother being killed, I realized I had to forgive her too. Even, that's weird. It's like, she didn't want to die. She didn't want to leave me. But as a child, when the world revolves around you, right? And you're like, everything that happens is because of me. My mom died because of me. My father didn't want to be here because of me. And then it grew into anger, especially with my father. Okay, well, he chose not to be here. And so I'm holding on to these different pieces. And the interactions that you have with your parents help you to either feel protected going out into the world or not feeling protected. And I didn't feel protected, and I was angry about that. And it's so insidious because anger can embed itself, frustration, pain, all of that can embed itself in your subconscious. So the decisions that I was making was because I needed to forgive, and I didn't even know it until I started to really look deeper into that. So, everybody's journey to forgiveness is different. But for me, going back to looking at what it must have been like for the people who were responsible for raising me. My mother was just murdered, which means my grandmother just lost a daughter. My uncle just lost a sister. Like there was so much going on. How do you deal with that? Right. And then there's this little 3-year-old that needs some attention. So being able to take a step back and looking at that has helped me in my forgiveness journey. But it's a process. And every time I think I've completely done it, there's something else that pops up. There's, oh, Shalita, there's that forgiveness work again. Let it go. It's a journey, not necessarily a destination.
Yeah. So another question from the chat from Maria, and she says, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights. Did you have a particular moment in your life when you felt things were turning around and changing for you, or maybe even a particular event that was somewhat like an epiphany that helped you?
Yeah, it was, well, when my son was born, right? It gave me a new sense of purpose, a new sense of being, almost like a second chance when I was talking about being able to build the family that I wanted, and being able to, break the generational curses or trauma. Like it was my second chance to be able to do that. Um, but then when I made the decision to be intentional about going inward and doing some of my healing work, which again, I keep saying, and I sound like a broken record, but momentum education, like when I went into that program, that transformational program, it really, really helped me to see some of the things that I was unwilling to see previously. And that shifted my relationship with everyone, shifted my relationships with myself. It shifted my relationships with my husband. It shifted my relationships with my friends. And I began to truly realize and see what it's like to have the things that I've been saying I wanted to have, and how some people fell away and other people came into my life that were more in line with what I wanted for myself. But that came after the hard work.
Anna asks, do you have a favorite affirmation that you find resonates with you and helps you in your journey of healing?
Favorite affirmation. I just love affirmations, period. But one of the ones that I gravitate towards and I have on my email signatures is be the change that you want to see in the world. Because, we have a tendency to want to change everything externally to us, and have an impact, which is wonderful. But I think the greatest impact is when we go inward and start making some of those changes within ourselves, because then that resonates in every other area.
Another question from Joy, and she's asking, how do you balance your healing journey with your professional life and professional advocacy work? And do they ever interrupt each other? And then how do you deal with it?
Oh, so up until this point, yes, because I was a workaholic. I was being busy just to be busy, meetings. And then with COVID, it's like a blessing and a curse, right? It really allowed me to ground myself and center. And what is it that I will allow? And what is it that I want to spend more time with? And so being able to spend time with my family and focus, make time on my own mental health and my own holistic health. I love how that feels. And I told myself that I will do my best to keep a balance and not go back to that busy, just to be busy, running from meeting to this and that. But I had to get clear on what was important to me and what my values are and what I will negotiate and what I won't negotiate. And it's a process being able to stick with that. So right now, I Fridays are my mental health days. And I've said, okay, I'm not scheduling anything on Friday. A couple of times I had to slap myself on the hand, but being able to say, this is what I will do and this is what I won't do, and understand that when you set those boundaries for yourself, the people who truly value you will honor them. And those who have an issue with you setting those types of boundaries may not be your people. So that's what I consistently remind myself of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm actually, now that we're at about halfway through time, I'm actually going to open it up to anyone in the audience. If you want to just ask Shalita a question out loud, you are so welcome to.
And we can go deep. Don't be scared. Like Savannah said.
So you know how, and sorry for my screen reader, I'm visually impaired. Anyways, so you know how I've been listening to your story, and so basically your when you were little, your mom was murdered. I'm guessing, right?
Yes.
I was gonna say, because I actually kind of feel bad for you. Not kind of, but I actually do feel bad for you. What am I saying? But
thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's something that things happen to us in our life that we can't control. And I think the important part, and what I try to consistently do, is just look at what they say, the silver lining. What what can I make good of this? You know, so when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade to the best of your ability. But there's just things that happen to all of us that we have absolutely no control over, and we get to choose. Uh-oh.
Excuse me.
Yes. Hi, Melody.
Well, listening to the story, and it's pretty sad, and I'm sorry about what happened, but I'm glad you're learning things, and you're moving on with, and you're trying your best to, have a good life and be positive, and
Yeah. Thanks, Melody. That means a lot. It does. And I'm here because I want you all to see that is possible for you too. Whatever you want for yourself. We've been told so many different things, especially, being.
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sorry. It's my connection.
Oh, you went out a little bit. Yeah, I can hear you now.
I was saying was that I'm sorry about your, what happened to your mom, but I'm glad, you're doing okay, and you're learning new things, and you're being positive, and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing.
Thanks, Melody. Yeah.
You're welcome.
It's not always easy. It is not always easy. I know you all know that.
My mom lost someone. Her name was Carrie. She was like, I guess, a sister of her or something like that, and it was pretty sad. It was her name. She was like an aunt to me. She died because I guess she was cooking and something happened.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for those questions. And I think even somewhere in your book, Shalita, you talked about feeling even closer to your mom these days.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I choose to believe that we go on from here. I believe in what they say, even the law of thermodynamics, energy can't be created or destroyed. So even though my mom may not, and even others that I care about so deeply may not physically be here with me, I do still feel her presence spiritually in my life. So yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Shalita. So sorry. Go ahead, Savannah.
I think Ashley Jamat had a question.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Shalita. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So excited that you could be here with us. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight. My question is related to your silver lining. What has been the best thing about going on this journey? Like, what have you, not kind of like what have you gained, but hearing that the journey can be difficult, hearing that there's a lot of work you got to put in, and all these things might be a little bit frightening. But kind of talk about the return on investment. After doing all this stuff, what is the thing that you've gained the most and that you're the happiest about, like, in your life?
Oh, Ashley, you and that question. Okay. So I feel like just me being able to get a better understanding of who I am. And there's a feeling with that where I just feel there's so many different ways that we're socialized, whether you're in foster care or not, on how we're supposed to think of ourselves, what we can have for ourselves in our future based off of so many different things. And going down this healing journey, it's helped me to unpack and to see that I can truly create the world that I want to be in. I do have power in making a life that I want for myself. And I don't have to allow what happened to me or what happened to my mom or my dad or any of that to influence where I want to go in a negative way. I can learn from them. But I think what I've learned is this isn't a race about, we're so competitive a lot of times when especially looking on Facebook and everybody, look at this, look at what I got. It's not a race. You are right where you're supposed to be at any given moment. And that coming to that understanding has lifted so much of a weight off of my shoulders, that there's this expectation that I'm supposed to be all these different things that I didn't even say I wanted to be. That is the silver lining for me. And the more that I lean into that, and the more I understand that, the more I unlock other things about myself that feed me and feed my family and feed my son, because ultimately what I leave and instill in him is going to be my legacy. So that to me is all worth it, right? Yeah.
I think there was someone else with a question too, so feel free to hop in.
I have another question. Sorry, I'm in my car now. You started to talk about how you gave your son your book and then changed your mind and decided to explain it to him. How did you, so I have a 12-year-old daughter who doesn't know she knows a little bit about my past, but not a whole lot. How did you find, how do you say it, to tell him without telling him the details?
Right. And that's why I took the book back from him, because I feel like there were some details in there where I was like, okay, he may not quite understand this right now. But what I found with him, and that I'm still learning, is that to get out of my own head and my own interpretations of how he's going to take what I'm saying, and to just answer his question, right? And give him what it is that he's asking for as far as information. I don't have to go deep into detail in the way that it's working in my mind. Like I told him, I was abused. I was abused by my uncle. And I would share different instances of what that looks like, but not necessarily the details about the sexual abuse that that I endured, because I knew that I could still share with him what happened to me in a way that, the same way as when I share my story, when I speak to foster parents, or, there's a difference between, I can tell the version of my story that makes people cry and then not know what to do with that, sort of unload it, or I can also tell a version of my story that's productive, right? And so that's how I try to approach it with him. Yeah. I hope that was helpful, but I'm still trying to figure it out myself, because part of me is said, well, maybe you should have given the book back. Maybe you should let him read it himself. I don't, but the other part of me was like, he may not be necessarily ready or really understand what I'm true at the depths that I'm sharing in this book.
Iviana, I think you might have had a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Shalita. Sorry, I don't have my camera on. I'm just, yeah. But I just want to thank you also for this conversation. It was super helpful and just insightful. I also have this similar experience too. I know your mom passed, and mine did too, when I was like younger, maybe middle school-ish age.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I ended up getting into the same thing in my professional life as you did, where you kind of want to stay busy all the time. And I still struggle with that. Just like I'm literally constantly looking for new opportunities, new things, new experiences, which is a good thing in some aspects. But in some ways, I know it's just because I'm trying to avoid dealing with a lot of other things as well.
Yeah.
So if you could just talk a little bit more about how you were able to manage that and kind of get to this piece that you kind of have now.
Yeah. Well, part of it is that, and I even have an Ancestor Altar, right? I mean, we have those in different ways, where you hang your pictures up of people who passed on, who you love. People call it different things, but I have my little altar where I still, I might, when I want to talk to my mom, I still do that. I still do those things. And, it doesn't take away from the pain in different circumstances, but me changing my perspective of how she's still present in my life. And that my husband tells me all the time, he says, whenever you want to see your mom, look in the mirror. Whenever you miss her, look in the mirror, because her blood is running through your veins. And even, it's weird, I'm so much like her that it's scary. And I was only with her for 2.5 years. I love to dance like her. My personality is so much like her. It's weird, right? But it's true. Whenever I get down and I feel like, oh, I wish she was here, that's what I do. So, I can't tell you or anyone else how to nurture that part or nurture that relationship. It's something that you have to explore. Because for me, before, it was really just about me drowning it out, or when I would, feel a certain kind of way, have some wine, and that made it worse. Right? But being able to be clear-headed and see, well, why am I feeling this way? And then honoring it, whether it's journaling or finding your own way to honor your mother, and honor whoever you've lost that still pains you and hurts you is really important, because we can't cover it up with anything. It's always going to be there.
Thank you.
Hey, Shalita, this is Priya.
Hey, Priya.
Hey. So I have 3 kids of my own on varying ages, high school, junior high, just actually out of elementary. But through this whole pandemic, different stages. My kids themselves, their friends just kind of checked out with everything that was going on in their lives during the pandemic. And I just, think about all the things that you were going through. Like, how did you keep education like top of mind when you were going through everything that you were doing?
I was laser focused because I looked at it as my way out. I knew that I did not want, I looked at different family members that were around me and their situations, and I knew that I did not want that for myself. And I was told that education was going to be my way out. I believed it, and I invested, in it. And it was very hard. It was very hard. When I was in college, I was working 3 jobs, have a full course load at a very large university that did not really care about foster care or what your personal issues were. Like, you were expected to know stuff before you got to the college, so it was all very difficult. But I think knowing and identifying what your why is, and I know we hear that a lot, but it's something to it. It could be different for you than it was for me, but I, at that point, wanted to prove everybody wrong, whoever thought that or said that I wasn't going to be anything or this and that. I wanted to prove them wrong, and I wanted to make my mother proud. And I wanted, in my mind, I was like, her death is not going to be in vain. I know she's looking at me from somewhere, from heaven, from the astral world, from whatever, celestials, wherever. I know she is watching me, and I want her to be proud of me. And that's what kept me going no matter what I went through.
Thanks.
I think that we can take probably at least one more question. So if anybody was just waiting to ask, now's the time.
I had a question, Shalita. Hi, Shalita. It's Marilyn.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi. What you're sharing with us today is so insightful and reflective. I'm just curious, how long did it take before you were comfortable sharing your story?
So I've been sharing my story since I was 18 years old, right? Through different programs that I was involved in. So I have refined it over the years. Like I was saying before, I would just get up on stage or talk to people and just like every detail about what happened to me. But as I got older and really was clear on how I wanted my story to help people, I was able to refine it in a way that did just that, right? And so that helped me in writing the book, because I had been telling my story for so many years, but I really wanted to be intentional about how I did that, and making sure that it helped other people through their journey and not necessarily overwhelm them.
Wow. Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing.
No problem. I'm honored to be here, honestly.
We're now at time. And I want to just thank you so much, Shalita. This was actually such a great hour to be able to spend with you, have some of our Pivotal family here, Pivotal scholars, friends of Pivotal who are here. There's just one last question. I think we should go there before we say goodbye, because we should go there. And so this is from someone who says, thank you for sharing your story with us today, and what a journey. Do you have any words of encouragement for kids who, like you, have gone through a struggle?
Just keep going. Just keep moving forward. Any resource that is put in front of you, the love and the care and the attention that Pivotal is giving to you, take advantage of it. Trust it. Trust the process. Yes, there are people out here who you have to be careful of, but there are also people out here who truly want to see you shine and who truly want to help you get there. And trust that intuition, right? That's one thing from being in foster care, is that we know when somebody is full of it within 10 seconds. And you know when somebody is really trying to love and pour into you, but then you're hearing this other voice that's not of that, that's telling you something different. Know the difference and discern and take advantage of those resources, because that is what helped me to get to where I am. That is what helped me to meet people like Elise, like Priya, like Savannah, right? Like Ashley, like Marilyn, because I opened myself up to that sort of support. And so that's what I would say. Just take advantage of the resources and the connections, because it is about people and it is about relationships. It's okay. It's okay to trust. And with that too, I know we're about to close out. I just want to thank everybody, all the supporters of Pivotal, in whatever way that you are supporting this organization. I'm so grateful for it, because it's making a difference. They are planting seeds in the lives of these young people, helping them to see their potential, helping them to see what is possible for them, helping them to get through an education, right, or academic situation that without Pivotal, they may not be able to get through. It has, even though I'm not doing what I got my degree in, which is fine, it still has come in handy, going back to that relationship building, that social capital building. And our young people truly need a village around them. So thank you, Pivotal family, for going out on a limb in this way and pouring into our young people. And hopefully there'll be many more organizations that follow suit.
Shalita, I just want to chime in. It's Elise. And I just want to thank you so much. The minute I met you, it was just instantaneous connection, and seeing you is filling my heart and hearing about your journey. And I just want to send so much love to you and gratitude for you spending this time with us. And can't wait to see your face in person again someday soon.
Oh, it's going to be soon. And I'll say one last thing too. What I really love about the Pivotal family is that you center the alumni voice, right? And I have never seen it in the way that you do it. A lot of organizations speak for young people in foster care, but you are helping them to find their own voice and giving them a platform to be able to use it in a way that nobody else is doing. That is powerful, and it's going to help them when they grow into who they're going to be in life. So thank you for really getting it, right? I love you guys.
Thank you so much, Shalita. Of course, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you to all of our guests and supporters, and definitely to our event sponsors, EW Training and Consulting. There's lots of ways that you can support Pivotal in honor of National Foster Care Month. You can send a scholar a care package. You can connect us to a company who might be interested in providing an internship for our scholars, make a contribution, and lots more. So please visit our National Foster Care Month webpage, and you can learn more at pivotalnow.org. Thank you so much, and thank you the most to Shalita tonight.